Jeroboam was the king of Israel. One day, he started thinking, if the people of Israel want to worship God, they have to go to the temple in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is in the kingdom of Judah, where their old king, Rehoboam, is ruling. Maybe the Israelites will start thinking of King Rehoboam as their leader. That was not what Jeroboam wanted, so Jeroboam made 2 golden calves. Then he made an announcement to the northern tribes. "It is so inconvenient for you to travel all the way to Jerusalem to worship at the temple," he said. "Look, these golden calves are the gods who brought your ancestors out of Egypt. You can worship them." What Jeroboam did was a sin. Those calves did not lead God's people out of Egypt. God led his people out of Egypt. Jeroboam also built forbidden shrines and celebrated made-up festivals so Israel would seem like a better place to live than Judah. Jeroboam led all the people in worship to the false gods. One day, Jeroboam was standing by an altar to make a sacrifice to a false god. God sent a prophet from Judah to share a message. The prophet said that a son named Josiah would be born into the family of King David. He would bring judgment on the priests who make sacrifices to false gods. King Jeroboam pointed to the prophet and shouted, "Arrest this man!" But suddenly, Jeroboam couldn't move his arm, and the altar next to him broke into pieces. "Help!" Jeroboam told the prophet. "Pray and ask God to heal my arm." So the prophet prayed to God, and God healed Jeroboam's arm. Still, Jeroboam's heart was hard, and he did not turn from his evil ways. He continued to sin by leading the people away from the Lord. Because of this sin, Jeroboam's kingdom would one day be destroyed. Sin always leads us away from God. Jesus came to bring us back to God. Jesus is the true King who gave his life as a sacrifice so we can be forgiven of our sins. Jesus' kingdom will last forever.
Once upon a time, and actually still to this day, there's a little village called Uptown. The village is full of happy people like Granny, who has a bakery on Main Street. It smells so good in the morning as she bakes fresh bread. Giuseppe is the barber. He's known to have the fastest scissors in the land, although that can be a liability. And then there's the adorable town cat named Kevin. One day, a young man came to visit Uptown. He was in search of a book of true, real stories that not only really happened for real, but will happen again in the future. The man had bought many, many books. Some had great adventures at sea with storms and shipwrecks and pirates, and there were stories of humongous whales that lived in the deep, and a mighty lion who ruled as a king, and brave knights on a noble quest. He loved his book so much. But every time he would get to the end, he would realize the story wasn't even true, which is okay. And imaginary stories are lots of fun, but he had already read all of them, and he wanted a great, true story. Giuseppe saw the sad man sitting beneath the oak tree and said, "Hey kid, I know exactly what you need. You need a haircut," as he flashed his speedy scissors around. Okay, said the man. So Giuseppe gave him the speediest haircut ever. Nice haircut. But he still didn't have the book he was looking for. The man was getting very hungry when he smelled the delicious bread at Granny's. Granny offered the man some of the delicious bread, and she noticed he seemed a little sad. She asked him, "Why are you sad?" He told her how much he loved books and great stories, but he couldn't find any that were totally true and full of mysteries and adventures and things that happened long ago, like when Granny was young. But also things that were going to happen still in the future. Granny's very wise, and she knew exactly what the man needed. She took him to a magical place called the library. There were so many great books. The one book he longed for just had to be there. The dusty old librarian pointed an ink-covered finger toward a very high shelf. Suddenly, Granny pulled out the most precious book from the shelf and handed it to the man. He wanted to check out the book immediately. He watched as the librarian stamped it with the official stamp. And then they opened the book and they saw all the great stories. It was exactly what his heart was looking for, and they were all true. A book full of mysteries and adventures and giants and flying creatures and battles and bad kings, but also a good mighty king who left his kingdom because he loved his people so much, he gave his life for them so they could be free from sin. The man thanked the librarian and Granny, and he headed home to tell everyone about the very best book ever. The end.